Hello Bits and Bones, my name is Lady V and welcome to my channel. Today I am reviewing Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World, the long-awaited sequel to Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. Because their titles are so long and similar, I will be referring to one as Waters of the World and the other as Discovering the Secrets. If you haven't read either, Discovering the Secrets was a wildly successful Bildungsroman about a boy named Ari, published in 2012 by Benjamin Elir Saenz, and fans have been waiting for a sequel for near a decade. Waters of the World dropped on October 12th in this, our year of continued pandemic, 2021. I will start by talking about the first book, go into a discussion about what I think is a major flaw on Goodreads that happened during the wait, and then my take on the second book. To start, I really enjoyed Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. I gave it a solid 4 out of 5 stars when I read it just last year. My review went as follows. This was a wholesome book. I enjoyed reading it and the relationships it presented. The narrative style reminded me of a tamer or more teenage James Frey, which suits the character. I felt the protagonist struggle to understand his emotions, and especially his annoyance or anger in situations / towards people he knew did nothing wrong, is a good representation of adolescents who need to know that it's okay not to be okay all the time, but that it doesn't excuse bad behavior. Slight spoiler, I'm still processing the ending, but I feel it should have been handled differently. For a book so open to conversation about gray area, it went with the happy ending, which didn't add more to it for me. An open-ended finish would have felt quite fine for a coming-of-age story, but all the ends tied up a bit too nicely. Now, to elaborate further on my original review, I honestly felt like Ari had been characterized as asexual more than some gay boy so repressed by society he was filled with rage, because although we read from his perspective, he never acknowledged an inclination to his sexuality one way or the other, even though, we're literally reading from his perspective. And it's perfectly normal not to be gay, but to be enraged and feel repressed by society for condoning homophobic behavior. That's normal. Or, in my case, to characterize Ari more as a demisexual who doesn't feel physical attraction to someone that they don't know. That makes complete sense towards the second book when he says he's not attracted to boys so much as he's attracted to Dante, but they just gloss over the nuance of it as, I'm gay, period. And it just might be me, but I don't think that finding someone objectively beautiful or loving them as a person makes you attracted to them, and choosing platonic friendship love is a viable option. Overall, I really liked the writing, the narrative voice that Saenz had, and the story of a young man growing up. I just felt like ending it on such an easy note was taking away from what a journey we'd gone through. It was a lot of hard questions ending on one easy answer. Now, before I get into the sequel, I want to point out there's been a slot for the sequel to Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe almost since it came out, and fans flocked to that page with no proper name and book with no actual existence to squee over their excitement for more. And quite honestly, I think that's immoral on Goodreads' part. I don't know how, but long before Waters of the World came out, its space on the book rating site already had good standing. Somehow people were rating something that didn't even exist, and it started at a 5 stars before it was even written. That's not right. That's not right at all. It completely destroys the integrity of making and reviewing content to allow people to speculate and rate things that don't even exist yet. You can still find comments on the current page, which has been updated to Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World, that have nothing to say but how excited they are to read it years before its release. These are not the reviewers who rated it ahead of time, but I had checked the page long before the announcement of the real title's release, and it had been rated already somehow, which is bonkers. Considering this page was reserved once Saenz mentioned a companion novel to the first, in Dante's perspective, I'd have liked to see them create a new page for the actual sequel and delete that one instead of converting it over so that all books could start on an even playing field. Even though it looks like they might have removed all of the ratings that somehow accumulated on there beforehand, repurposing all of the comments and interaction of a page that was not meant for this specific book into a different book seems a little bit sketch. Now on to Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World. If you've been on my channel a while, you'll know that I have not yet DNF'd a book. I try my very best not to, and although this was not a full DNF, it was as close as I've yet to get to one. I gave up around page 130 on my copy, which had 455 pages, and I just skimmed the rest afterwards. I am extremely let down by Waters of the World, and it's fallen into the category of sequels that didn't need to be made, as I found that it only detracted from the impact of the original. I genuinely loved Ari as a character in Secrets of the Universe. I liked his discovery and growth and commentary, but Waters of the World took those things and ironically watered them down into mediocre non-content. I calculated the pages between the two, and Waters of the World was literally 30% longer than Secrets of the Universe, with less than half as much to say. I'm not here to presume the intentions of the author, but it felt like a cash grab. Waters of the World disappointed me in about as equal a way as my friend Leonard disappointed me after falling in love with A Million Little Pieces, and considering the similarity between Saenz and Frey's writing style, that's an actual awfully strange coincidence if you ask me. I don't think it has anything to do with the writers being one-hit wonders or too set in their style to do anything else meaningful with it. I think it's a case of taking an impactful character-driven story and dragging it out too long, aka too much of a good thing. There are some meaningful topics brought up in Waters of the World, and I don't want to discredit them because I'm sure that this novel was cathartic to some readers who can relate to the struggles of coming out, the fear of AIDS during its outburst, or just young love. But I gave up on this book because everything in between was a whole lot of nothing. By page 130, I had gotten absolutely nothing but Ari wanting to kiss Dante, kissing Dante, and everyone loving each other. I might sound like an asshole, but I can't read 130 pages of the main character constantly trying to discredit himself as insensitive, even though everyone says he's great and they love him every other page. It gets tedious. It felt like Saenz took the young adult romance dial that he'd set as an acceptable tolerance in discovering the secrets, and turned it up so hard it snapped off of whatever machine they used to pump out young adult novels. After that point, I continued to skim the book, but I wasn't surprised to find that the whole goddamn novel was dialogue. Witty banter between Ari and Dante, and their parents, and his friends, over and over, and then them appreciating how witty and good they all are out loud. It felt like the characters were constantly emotionally jerking each other off to the point where it was hard to even feel good reading it, or even like the characters that I had once found witty and fun to listen to. Then there were conflicts played out in dialogue with other characters that spelled out the right and wrong side of a confusing world that's only conflict worth talking about has to revolve around young men being gay. Waters of the World took my complaint about the first novel revolving Aries' identity too much around every single aspect of his life being affected by homosexual existence and doubled down. There was little else in this novel besides regurgitation on how gay people are people too, which is great, but if that's it for 450 pages, that's not enough nuance for me. I'm sure people will come here and mention other things do happen, like the loss of a family member, making new friends, a long-lost meeting, and kids standing up to ignorant teachers, but you could cut 80% of this novel out and still have those small few events. Ari goes to see his incarcerated brother that's been a mystery since the first novel, and we don't just get him going to see him. We get him having dreams about his brother. We get him in the car with his father. We get him in the hotel before he goes to the prison. So much of this could have been cut out. And don't get me started on the dialogue between him and his brother. It's so staged, so perfect. It feels like there's no point in reading it. And that's how most of the dialogue in this novel feels. I don't know if I'll actually include this, but here's a dramatic reading between Ari and his brother. No. I wanted to see you. I was curious. I mean, what the fuck? But if you were expecting a fucking Hallmark card, I'm not your guy. Sorry to disappoint you. I'm not disappointed. I didn't have expectations. I just wanted to meet you. Wanted to see for yourself? Why not? Oh, so you wanted to come to the zoo. I don't happen to think you're an animal, and I've thought about you a lot. What a waste of time. I didn't think about you at all. Am I supposed to feel hurt? Isn't that what sensitive boys do for a living? Get their feelings hurt? Not this one. You're not gonna cry? I'm disappointed. You should have lowered your expectations. He started laughing. I mean, he was really laughing. What do you know? My baby brother can hang with the big boys. He knows just what to say. He had an awful grin. You look a lot like the old man. That's too fucking bad. But that's not your fault. He was studying me, but it felt like he was searching. So you wanted to meet your big brother. To find out what? To interview him? To write a paper for your English class? My visit with my brother. To make you feel like you're better than me? To make you feel good about yourself? Look, everybody, I'm such a good guy. I went to see my brother who's murdered someone. Look at me, I'm such a decent guy. And then it was like he decided to be nicer, or to try to carry on a conversation. So you a junior? A senior? A senior. President of the senior class? No, not even close. Bet you're a good student. I do okay. It's trying to be dramatic and curt between their exchanges, but here's another example that I found while I was skimming through the rest of the book that I found, like, so funny but confusing that, like, I kind of had a brain meltdown. This is an interaction between Ari and a new teacher at his school once it started up again. They've already had quite a bit of banter, and then it devolves into this. And then she started giggling, and the giggling gave way to laughter, and then she really got going, and her laughter grew louder and louder. She laughed and laughed and laughed, and then she said, "And I kept digging myself deeper and deeper, and I just couldn't stop. And you looked so exasperated, and I just kept right on going." And she was laughing just as hard as the students had been laughing. And then she stopped and tried to compose herself. And when the young man behind you whispered, "This is what fucking purgatory is like," well, I almost lost it too. And I saw the look on your face, and you thought I was about to cry. But I do have a little discipline. I wasn't about to cry. I was about to join in the laughter, and I'm sorry I exert so much self-control when I should have let her rip. And she was laughing again. You're a very interesting lady. I am a very interesting lady. Like, who talks like that? I'm not saying that books have to perfectly capture what actual dialogue feels like, but this is just so scripted. The word isn't uncanny, but it feels like you're listening to aliens talk to each other. I know this is fiction, but it's unrealistic to the point of being annoying. So much of this book is filler dialogue that makes me feel like it wants to waste my time. The same goes for Ari's introspection. A character that was once blunt and nuanced and I loved in the first book had this to say about school. High school. Teachers. Students. Some students would have preferred to have no teachers. Some teachers would have preferred to have no students. But it didn't work that way. Somewhere along the line, schools were born. That was the place where the country of teachers and the country of students met, where the two countries embraced, collided, clashed, crashed into each other, fought each other, and, through the efforts of the citizens of both countries, made something called learning. I thought about these things a lot, maybe because my mother was a teacher. And then 2 paragraphs later concludes this page with, the country of teachers, the country of students, the country of high school, the country of learning. There were some themes that were brought up very early in the novel that clearly Saenz wanted to carry through, but the frequency of them and the lack of nuance to them became very, very droll. Like, did no one edit this book, or did they just want the page count? All of the characters in this book are so perfectly curated that it felt obnoxious. And I don't say that lightly. This book was obnoxious, and that's all the more sad considering the great writing that it came after. If you liked Waters of the World, power to you. I can't blame you for wanting more after reading Discovering the Secrets, or being happy for the characters after all of the things that they went through in the first book. But this one wasn't a novel so much as a long, uninteresting epilogue fanfiction. It had good messages and could certainly help guide or justify adolescents reading it, but it dropped all appeal to the wide demographic it once held, was boring, and full of filler. Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World gets a 1.5 out of 5 stars because that's about how much content was actually in the novel. Sorry, not sorry. Well, that's the end of the video, so as always I'd like to thank you for watching. If you want to support me, I've linked my Patreon in the description below, and if you pledge to my second tier, you get the opportunity to vote on what movies you want me to review next. And I have one position open every month for the Revenant that gets to pick what book I might read every month and review. Thanks again, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!